haven't talked about before. I'm going to go with blue. I think we can see blue pretty good. So what we're looking at here is the eyeball at a side view. Okay, so you notice, remember when we dissected the eyeballs, you had a posterior chamber back here with vitreous humor that had that jelly-like stuff. Over here was the watery stuff. And then the outside of the eyeball, the white stuff was the sclera, and the front was the clear cornea. I'm just recapping. I expect you to remember this. You don't have to write it. You should already know it. And then on the inside, you have the retina, which contained your photoreceptors for vision, and it left the eyeball here as the optic nerve. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Below the retina was the choroid. It was very vascular. It supplied nutrition for the retina. In between the anterior and the posterior chamber right here was your lens. Remember, the lens could change size to accommodate, and it did that with the help of the ciliary bodies. The ciliary body, it's one big circle, has strings or ligaments that are attached to the capsule of the lens, allowing it to stretch out and thin, or get thicker if it needs to. In front of the lens was the iris right there. And the iris was that circle that gave your eye its color, also responsible for the size of the pupil, which controlled the amount of light coming into the eye. I'm going quickly because this is all stuff we know already, right? That's what you should already know. So let's add a little bit more to that. Surrounding the eyeball, other than all of this stuff here that is fat, there are muscles like this one here and this one. These are called extrinsic muscles. They are the ones that move your eyeball in all different directions. We also have muscles in the eyelids. The upper eyelid, this is it right here, and the lower eyelid right there, they both have muscles. The eyelids are actually not called eyelids, they're called palpebra. If we're talking anatomically, we want to name them palpebra. So the palpebral muscles are the muscles that move your eyelids. They open and shut your eyelids. Okay. Now, some defense mechanisms. We have eyelashes here on the end of those eyelids, and those are meant to stop debris and dirt from getting into your eyes. We also have a layer of tissue called the conjunctiva. And I'm going to erase everything so I can show you where this conjunctiva is. And we're going to go, we can go blue. So we have a mucous membrane called conjunctiva. It's in yellow here, but I'm going to make it blue so you can see it. That lines where the sclera is, the exposed part of the sclera, and the inside of your upper and lower eyelids. And that is the conjunctiva. Now the conjunctiva is the part of your eye where if you have like red eyes, or maybe you have pink eye, it's the conjunctiva that's inflamed. And yes, so pink eye is actually conjunctivitis, or it's one of the types of conjunctivitis. Okay, so that was, I'm going to circle the stuff we didn't talk about before that you should recognize: the conjunctiva and the palpebral muscles. Where is it here? Well, you can just say palpebral muscle. Okay, and then we have over here the extraocular or extrinsic. These are your extrinsic muscles.
And the canals of Schwann are the ones that make the tears.
So we're actually not, we're going to talk about the lacrimal apparatus a little bit, but we're not going to talk about the canal, but it has to pass through there to drain. And that's the part that if it gets clogged, you end up with, we're not going to talk about those just yet. So don't confuse people, Shelby. Talk to me after class. Don't confuse me. Okay. So this is the slide that's going to contain the stuff that we haven't, that's supposed to be a star, believe it or not. Okay, spring break's over. Contains the stuff that we haven't talked about that you still need to know. Things like the palpebral muscles, what do? They control your eyelids. The extrinsic muscles are going to control what? Your eyeball. They're going to move your eyeball. The conjunctiva, that is the membrane that I talked about that lines the inside of your eyelids and the exposed part of the sclera. The lacrimal apparatus. Let's talk about that for a minute. So if this is the eyeball here, or that's the front of your eye, there is a tear producing apparatus called the lacrimal apparatus. And its job is to continuously produce tears that will wash over the eye and then drain in the corner of the eye right here into the lacrimal sac. Okay. For me, you just need to know that the lacrimal apparatus produces and drains tears. But I'll explain it to you a little bit. So we're producing tears from here. It's meant to constantly wash over that eye so that if you are exposed to any dirt or debris, it washes away into the lacrimal sac. And the lacrimal sac sits inside of the lacrimal. Y'all remember this from bones? Lacrimal fossa? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Now, the idea is it's continuous washing. Anytime you have an increased production in these tears where it's not draining fast enough, or you fill up the sac and it hasn't had time to drain from the sac, you'll have an overflow. And that's what we call crying or tearing. So whenever your eyes are watering, you know that either you're producing extra tears or the sac, you produce it at a rate that the sac has not been able to drain it all. Okay, and that can happen with, if you get something in your eye and your eye is trying to flush it out, it will produce more tears. Or if you have, say, a cold and all of your mucous membranes are inflamed, the opening to that sac can actually become inflamed and cause less tears to go in it.
Do they have like a fancy word for tears, or is it just tears?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me? I think it's just tears. Tearing is called lacrimation and is produced by the lacrimal apparatus. And it's drained in the lacrimal sac. So maybe, okay, so we have 3 layers to our eyeball. You do need to know these. There's a fibrous layer, which is the stuff on the outside, the cornea and the sclera. That's the tough outer shell of the eyeball that helps contain everything inside of it. Then we have a special layer called the retina all by itself, because the retina is the part that contains your photoreceptors. And then in between, or everything else, is considered the vascular tunic. So the vascular tunic will include things like the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris. Like this so far? Maya's already asleep. I've only been talking for 2 minutes.
I'm not asleep, I'm sleeping.
Sorry. You look like you're sleeping. Is Jennifer here? Jennifer said she's going to have a lot of questions. Who is that?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Are you sleeping, girl? You have questions. I don't have any questions. Okay.
No,
It's
I'm
fine, 'cause I came in
listening.
late, so you don't even have to ask questions. We'll still be fine. Okay, so here is a different angle view. So it's like we're looking on top of someone and we've chopped off the top of their head. We're looking at the eyeball. Same things we've already seen are all here. This is a good example of how the ciliary body and the iris are complete circles, not just top and bottom, the way we've been seeing them. Shelby had mentioned the canal of Schlemm, and it is right over here. And that is one of the things that causes that increased intraocular pressure if it's blocked and you can't drain the aqueous, but we don't have to worry about that in here. You see a lot of fat here behind the eyeball and around it. That is for protection, shock absorption. You see the extrinsic muscles here and here controlling the movement of the eyeball. There's not too much in this picture that you really need to add. It's just a different look at things. And over here, you can see the lacrimal sac right there. Okay.
The design of the human body is way cool.
What?
The design.
No,
of the
it's
human body is
crazy
way
cool. Okay, so let's start tearing things apart into little bits and pieces, and we're going to start with the iris. But I need to change my color because this color is not doing enough for me. So the iris is the part of the eye that gives it its color. It's also the part that controls the size of the pupil. What is the pupil?
our little brown muscle. And
The pupil
Oh, wait,
is
hold
the
on.
space in the iris. Okay, so the iris gives color and controls the pupil. What is the pupil?
the whole.
Space. It is the space in the iris. And by controlling the size of the pupil, the size of that opening, you control the amount of light coming in. Think of it as a window that has a blackout screen attached to it, or a curtain. You close the curtain, you get less light. You open it up, you get more light, right? Make sense? Okay, so that's the iris's job, to open and close this curtain, which is the pupil, or the space, would be the pupil, not the curtain, to allow more light in or to reduce the amount of light. It does that through autonomic reflexes. Okay, this is under autonomic control. Let's talk about the iris. The iris is actually made up of two muscles. Two muscles. One muscle is in the center and it goes in a circle around that space. That is called the circular muscle. Attached to the circular muscle and the edges of the eyeball is another muscle called the radial muscle. And the radial muscle has fibers that go from the circular muscle to the outside edge. And it looks like that. You guys get this so far? Okay. Let's talk about the circular muscle. If you have a muscle that's in a circle, I have to demonstrate here. Okay. If I have can you guys see me on camera?
Yes.
Maybe,
I
okay.
know.
If you have a muscle that's in a circle and you contract those fibers, when you contract a muscle fiber, what does it do? It shortens, right? So if you contract that muscle, it will tighten up and the circle gets smaller. When the circle gets smaller, the opening called the pupil also becomes smaller. What's wrong, Shelby? Your eyebrow, you're gonna get wrinkles, girl. What's going on?
First of all, I have wrinkle cream. I'm good.
You're too young for wrinkle cream, but okay.
Okay, this is where it starts. I was just thinking, like, how did the radial muscles work? Does the circular muscle pull on it? So
No,
the
we're
fibers-
not, we're talking only circular muscle now,
Okay.
okay? So, and we already know that if we have two muscles like this and this next to each other, or that work against each other or together, one of them has to relax for the other to contract, okay? So if the circular muscle, the inner one, contracts, it makes the pupil smaller. That is what we call pupil constriction. It constricts the pupil. So the circular muscle, when it contracts, it makes the pupil smaller. It constricts the pupil. So that means when you go outside from a dark room and it's really bright, the circular muscle will contract to reduce the amount of light coming in. And that is called pupil constriction. Now, when the circular muscle is contracting, Shelby, the radial muscle is relaxed. So it allows that to happen. When you contract the radial muscle, which is the one on the outside here, this one here, when you contract that circular muscle has to be relaxed. And what happens is it actually pulls it to the edges. See how this fiber here is much shorter than this one here? Can you see that?
Mhm.
Okay, so when the radial muscle contracts, we call that dilation. That allows more light into your eye.
This is like way cool.
Okay, so now we know that the iris is made up of two muscles, a circular muscle on the inside, a radial muscle on the outside. The circular muscle has fibers in a circle, and when it contracts, it makes the pupil smaller. We call that constriction. The radial muscle has fibers that extend from the circular muscle to the outside edge, kind of like a starburst or sunburst. And when it contracts, it opens up the pupil, opens up that space, causing the pupil to dilate. So far, so good?
So far, so good.
Okay, let's add to it a little more.
This is wacky to me that I've always been under the impression that the only time that the muscle was contracting, period, was when it was constricting and when it was dilating.
Right. Most people think, and most people do have that idea that when your iris, when your pupil is constricted and it's really small, that little black dot is super small, that muscle is actually just contracted and closing it up. In reality, it's two different muscles. So the circular muscle causes pupil constriction, right? Notice these are both these muscles have to contract to do what they do. But when the circular muscle contracts, it causes the pupil to constrict, meaning less light coming in, right? Not only that, but it is controlled by the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, when the pupil dilates and becomes bigger, it means that the radial muscle has contracted. And when the radial muscle contracted, we call that it dilating the pupil, and that allows more light to come in. I'm gonna add the word in here. Okay, more light coming into the eye. This is done through the sympathetic nervous system, which makes total sense because when you are under fight or flight, you need the absolute highest visual acuity. You need things like to be able to see at night, right? In the dark when you're running away from the murderer. So you will need that sympathetic stimulation to open up the pupil, allow you to bring in as much light as you can to be able to see as well as you can. Okay? Are we good? This is super important. I don't want you guys to be confused about it. Do we understand everything on the slide? Iris is made of two muscles, circular and radial. Circular muscle on the inside, when it contracts with the parasympathetic system, it causes constriction. Constriction reduces the amount of light going into the eye. And it is under parasympathetic stimulation.
Anytime my cat gets excited, and I have three of them, so I would know. Like whenever it's cold outside and they just decide they want to chase each other, their pupils are always huge, and that's how we know not to mess with them because they'll.
That's how you know they're under fight or flight, right? Back off the cat, they're under fight or flight. Also, if you watch people, if you really focus on people, you'll notice that when they get angry or agitated, their pupils will dilate because they're going into fight or flight. That's the sympathetic kicking in. And then the parasympathetic would be the circular muscle. I was talking about circular muscle before, wasn't I? And I switched. Okay. Shelby, you did it. Parasympathetic controls the circular muscle. Circular muscle, when it contracts, it constricts the pupil, allowing less light in. The sympathetic controls the radial muscle. When it contracts, it opens up that pupil, dilating it, allowing more light to come in. And this happens constantly throughout the day. The entire time you're awake, your pupils are constantly, your iris is constantly adjusting the size of the pupil depending on how much light is around you. Okay? Mm-hmm. Cool? Questions? No? Good? Are we good? I guess we're good. Y'all sure we're good? Okay. Now, let's talk about vision. But before we talk about vision, let's get some definitions on things in the retina. So we know that the retina is, first of all, it's a layer by itself, and it also lies in the posterior chamber of the eyeball. We also know from dissection that the retina leaves the eyeball as the optic nerve. Do you remember where? Anyone? Anybody?
Yes. In the back.
The optic disc. So the retina leaves the eyeball through the optic disc. That's the opening where the optic nerve is. That part of the retina, I told you guys before that the retina is the nervous tissue part. That's the part that has the photoreceptors, the rods and cones. Where it leaves as the optic nerve, at the optic disc, that is your blind spot. Okay? So optic disc is the blind spot. That's the part that you cannot see from because there are no receptors in that part. Those are just axons of neurons that are leaving as the optic nerve. Now, the exact center of the retina is called the macula lutea. So if this whole circle was the retina, this inner circle would be the macula, and the very center of the macula, in the center of the very center of the macula is called the fovea. And the fovea centralis is your area of highest visual acuity. That is where your vision is sharpest. Okay, here's another cool thing. Every part of your eyeball that has to do with vision, like your cornea, your lens, both of those, their job is to focus all of the light rays that are coming into your eyeball through that pupil right here on that fovea centralis. So that means that what you see here in the center of the macula, in the fovea, that is your sharpest vision. Everything outside of that, here or here, is going to be your peripheral, more blurry type of vision. Okay, so that means if you're looking at me, the light rays that are reflecting off of my body should be going to the fovea.
It's always been wacky to me that we can kind of see what's going on over here, like because our people lives up here.
Yeah. Now imagine if you were like a lizard or a frog. You have way more, way more vision. Okay, any questions on this? You need to know that the blind spot is the optic disc. You need to know that the macula is the center of the retina and the fovea is the center of the macula. And that is your highest visual acuity, where everything needs to go. Okay, here is a nice image of that. So this is exactly what your eye doctor can see when you go and have your eyes examined routinely and they get that otoscope and they get really close after they've dilated your pupils. And why do they dilate your pupils? Because that's the window to all of this. And the bigger they can get it, the more they can see. So when they're looking through your pupil, they're actually seeing the retina and the choroid. Now, right here, this is the optic disc. So that's the blind spot. That's where the optic nerve leaves the eyeball. Right here, this area is a little bit darker. Oh, red's not working. This area right here is a little darker. That is the macula. So that is a high concentration of rods and cones of your photoreceptors in there. And the very center of it is the fovea. And that is where all of the light rays are meant to fall on the fovea. Okay. Moving on. Man, I'm already tired of talking.
Well, I have like this really cool fact for you because you were talking about lizards and like stuff that has eyes on the sides of their head. So the front stuff, the front vision is reserved for predators, and this is reserved for the prey. So there was actually this goat. Yeah. So there is this goat, and goats are like prey. So of course they had it over here. And sometime before the last ice age, they went onto this island, and it wasn't an island back then. It was actually like a land bridge, the same way that between Russia and Alaska. So it was in the Mediterranean, and they like hopped on over there, and by the time that they had established their presence, the ice started melting and they were trapped. So wacky thing about this, they evolved to get really small because it was super cold.
Wait, what were they though? What kind of animal?
They were goats.
Goats.
They were
Oh.
goats.
Oh.
Yeah, and they evolved with frontal vision. It was wacky.
Mm.
They were like 13 inches tall at the highest. They
Where'd
were
they go?
amazing. Yeah.
Are they extinct?
Oh yeah. About 3,000 years after they lived there for 15,000 years.
Wow.
And then 3,000 years by the time that humans had got there to the island, 3,000 years later, they were all dead. Kind of them to extinction.
Too bad. They were little goats.
They were tiny. They were 13 inches tall. And it's wacky because they were not very fast. Like they didn't jump.
But they were
didn't
predators.
run. They had eyes like predators.
Yeah. Huh.
And they had no natural predators on that island.
So I guess humans are predators because we got our eyes in the front. We are definitely predators.
Yeah.
All right.
And we're endurance predators.
All right, so let's talk about what is special with the retina that allows us to use it for vision. We have photoreceptors in the retina, and those photoreceptors are called rods and cones. And we're going to talk about them for a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit about vision, and then we'll go back to the rods and cones. So rods, and you see in the picture here, the rods are the ones that look like little cream-colored hairs. Rods are the type of photoreceptors that are really good for dim light and night vision. The cones will be our color vision receptors. Okay, so for now, I want you to know that rods are dim light and night vision. Cones will be color vision. So you'll see things more sharply with cones, and you'll also see colors. And rods, you'll see things with dim lighting. They won't be as sharp, but you'll see in situations that you would not normally be able to see. So we have rods and cones, two types of photoreceptors. They will pick up on the light rays because they're photoreceptors, obviously, acting as sensors. From there, that impulse is going to go through several synapses, several different types of neurons. We call it the outer synaptic layer, and then it goes to bipolar neurons, and then it goes to an inner synaptic layer, and then to ganglion cells, and then eventually that will be the optic nerve. Okay, so we have several synapses from one to the other until we get to the point of being an optic nerve that leaves the eyeball. And where does it leave the eyeball at? Optic disc. What's wrong?
Can you go back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, from these sensors, information flows to the outer synaptic layer, the bipolar cells to the inner synaptic layer, and ganglion cells. Did we cover that in the Wednesday lecture and I missed it?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
No. And you don't have to. It's like it starts with your rod, right? So imagine your cone or your rod, and then it's going to synapse with your outer synaptic layer, and then it synapses with a bipolar cell, synapse with another cell, and then synapse with your inner synaptic layer, and then a ganglion cell that leaves as the optic nerve. It's just a lot of detail that we don't need. I just made it easy on you and took it out. I thought that picture was cooler, but no, we didn't cover it before. And really all I need you to know now is that we have photoreceptors that are rods for dim light, cones for color, and those will relay or synapse on several different neurons until they leave as the optic nerve.
That's talking about parasympathetic ganglia, right?
No, we're not talking about ganglia at all. Where did ganglia come into this? These are ganglion cells. This is a name of a cell, not a ganglion like we know of. These are just ganglion cells.
Okay.
Make sense now?
Sort of.
I'm gonna have to pull it. You have the book? Open the book and you'll see the pictures. It's just a type of cell. It's a type of cell. Okay, are we okay on Zoom? Okay, this is
Yes, ma'am.
I'm the only one that stays confused.
It's okay. We'll quit skipping Wednesdays and you wouldn't be confused.
I have to work all the time.
This is just a summary of what we have talked about so far. I do expect you to know what these things do, but you should already know them, like the cornea and the sclera. The cornea is going to be one of the ones that is important when we start talking about vision, because the cornea has to be curved properly and uniformly in order for it to give you clear vision. And then obviously the sclera is more to protect. The iris, we already know, regulates the size of the pupil, and by doing that, it regulates the amount of light coming into the eye. The ciliary body is going to help accommodation with the lens by pulling on it, making it thinner or allowing it to get thicker. The choroid is going to support the retina with blood supply. And obviously the retina is the main part. So the retina is the part that's going to take those light rays coming in, through the rods and cones and then relay them onto several cells until you eventually get to the optic nerve. Goes to the brain and is interpreted as vision. The lens, remember your field of vision lens is going to have to be clear. It's going to take those light rays that are coming in from outside of the eye and focus them right onto the fovea. That's the lens's job, is to take all those scattered rays and bring them all to that one point called the fovea. The anterior cavity or chamber has aqueous humor. You already know that. That's the watery stuff. It also helps maintain the shape of that cornea. The posterior chamber down here is vitreous humor or vitreous body. That helps keep the retina in place on the choroid and gives your eyeball its nice rounded shape. All just quick revision. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
When we talk about astigmatism, I know the shape of the eyeball is whack, but like, what exactly?
We're gonna talk about it. That's what we're about to do. So when we start talking about vision, we're gonna start talking about defects in vision.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You like skipping ahead. Okay,
I swear I haven't seen this. I just have 1,000,003 questions.
okay. Well, let me confuse you a little more right here with this top one right here. Images focused on the retina are inverted and right to left reversed. That means that all the light rays, all the images that come into your retina are inverted and reversed. And it's the job of your cortex, the visual center is what takes it and reverses it and reverses it. Does that make sense? Okay, you don't have to know that it's inverted and right to left. It's just kind of cool to understand.
So does the optic chiasm, like where it crosses over, is
No.
that part of anything or not really?
No, the optic chiasm, we'll talk about it in a minute. The optic chiasm is, so each eyeball is going to contribute to everything you see. And when we get to the field of vision, we'll talk about how that optic chiasm allows crossing over.
Like a
Crossing
spoon.
over, okay? I don't know what that means, like a spoon.
Because like when you look at a spoon, you don't just see your face, you see upside down and backwards.
Oh, okay. All right, the lens is what accommodates, and that word is important, to allow you to focus on an object. Okay, what does that mean, accommodation? Well, let's look. So this is an object right here, giving off light rays. The lens's job is to focus those light rays right on the fovea. That's the only way you can have clear vision, okay? So, wants to go on the fovea. Now, when this object here changes distance from the eyeball, the lens will also have to accommodate by changing thickness. So, look at this close object here on the right side. Notice how the lens is big and fat, because again, it has to focus it right there on the fovea. When you get an object that's further away, the lens becomes thinner in order to focus it right here on the fovea. And this is simple physics here, which we don't have to get into, but we just need to understand that the lens has the ability to accommodate, and it does so in order to bring those light rays right on to that one spot, the fovea. And it's kind of crazy to think that this entire eyeball, everything that happens is trying to bring it all to the fovea. Like we don't even care about the other rods and cones that are scattered around. We're all focused on the fovea because that's where the sharp vision is. Now, this entire pathway, I'm gonna trace it in red. This is what affects your field of vision. Notice the light rays here. Do you see them? They just pass through the cornea. So that means if something is wrong with the cornea, like say an abnormal curvature of the cornea, that's going to cause a defect in vision. And that's what we call astigmatism you were asking about. It has to go through the lens. What if there's something in the lens, like a little opaque part? That's going to affect vision, and that's what we call cataracts. Okay? Then it has to travel through the vitreous and hit right onto the fovea. So this entire pathway here of these light rays has to be clear and has to be shaped perfectly. If the cornea is not curved properly, you'll have a defect in vision. If the lens is opaque, or maybe the lens has lost its ability to accommodate, maybe it's getting older and more rigid and it can't accommodate as well, you're going to have a defect in vision.
Is that also cataracts?
No, when it becomes older and loses a little bit of that elasticity, that's when you start needing reading glasses, and that is a normal change with age. Cataracts is only when there's an opacity in the lens. Okay, so far so good, but we understand the idea of taking those light rays and focusing them right on the fovea. That's the whole point of this. Okay?
I've heard that in like countries where literacy is low, especially, you get people that are outside more and they're looking at things farther away. So I don't remember what the word for it is. I know that the up close.
We're about to take it.
Yeah.
We're about to take it.
So, literacy causes eye disease.
We're about to talk about it, but I want you to notice that no matter where this object is, it's always focused right here on the fovea, right? Look how it hits. It hits right on the fovea, not in front of it, not behind it. Okay. So this is a good example of an emmetropic eye, which just means an eye with normal vision. So this would be that 20/20 vision, don't need glasses, don't need contacts, okay? It means that light rays coming into this eye are passing through a perfectly curved cornea, a lens that can accommodate properly and has no opacity in it, and it's hitting right there, smack dab in the center of the macula, which is called the fovea centralis. Okay, I want you to remember normal. And here you go, Shelby. I stuck this here because I had nowhere else to put it. Astigmatism is where you have a cornea or maybe even a lens that has an irregular curve to it. So if that cornea wasn't perfectly curved, say I had a cornea that had a little bit more of a curve at the bottom, that's astigmatism. A little wrinkle up top, that's astigmatism. All right, so anything that that causes this surface to not be perfectly smooth and curved the way it should be at the right degree will be called astigmatism, and that is obviously going to affect vision, because this is supposed to be like a glass, perfectly shaped glass that light rays can come in and be focused right there on the fovea.
Like a telescope.
Like a telescope, sure. Okay.
Wait.
No, okay, my pleasure. I'm waiting. Maya's never said wait. I will wait, girl, as long as you need me to. I'll wait as long as you need me to. But do you guys understand what the idea is now behind our vision, like how it's supposed to look? Because we're about to look at some abnormal examples.
Which is funny because it's not just like a perfect ball.
What do you mean it's not a perfect ball?
Because like it's kind of.
No, it's supposed to be a perfect ball.
That would be immatropic then.
What?
It must not be immatropic then.
It has to be a perfect ball. If it changes in length, like if I were to make this eyeball longer in the back like that,
Would be me.
look where this goes. This is not, the retina would be back here. It's falling in front of the retina.
And that's nearsightedness.
What if I make the eyeball shorter? Then it's falling behind the retina. That's what we're going to look at in a minute. You ready? Okay, let's do it. Okay, so here we go. Nearsightedness, that Shelby has said like 3 times already, is myopia.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Nearsightedness is myopia.
I had to study at home what was actually wrong with me.
You're fine. I want you to look over here on the left at this picture, okay? So what's happening here? Here are my light rays coming in, going through the cornea, through the lens. They're supposed to fall on the fovea, but this is where they are falling. The retina is behind that. So it's actually falling short of the retina. It's falling in front of the retina. So, sorry. You'll also hear or maybe read that nearsightedness or myopia can be caused by an eyeball that is longer than it should be. This is not the only reason for nearsightedness, by the way, okay? But it's easier to think of it that way. So if I elongated an eye, like the dotted lines here are showing you where the eyeball should have stopped, where the retina should be. And these guys here are doing their job. The lens and the cornea are in perfect shape, but still my image or my rays are falling in front of the retina. Okay, that is what we call nearsightedness. By the way, someone that is nearsighted will be someone that can see close objects sharply, but have trouble seeing things at a distance.
Oh, I'm like that.
Okay,
Mine is not.
so it's
even-
just as it says, nearsightedness. You can see near objects, but you can't see far away.
No, I can't see
Now-
my hand right here clearly. I swear.
I don't want you to worry about the correction too much right here, but we're going to look at it anyways, because a lot of us, especially in young adulthood, are nearsighted, right? So you use a concave lens. Look what happens with your light rays. They're coming in, they hit the lens, and they go out. They go out, and then the cornea and the lens can do their job so that by the time they focus it, it hits right on the fovea. That's how you correct that vision. Okay,
Is it concave or biconcave?
it is actually biconcave. All right, so myopia, nearsightedness, and this is the type of defect in vision where you have really thin lenses. They're not the big fake bottle cap lenses that you see. They're skinnier. Okay.
Is this still a form of
And Jennifer, I'm
astigmatism?
talking over you.
Oh, sorry. Is this still a form of astigmatism or no?
No. So, okay. So here's the deal. Astigmatism is referring to the cornea curvature or the lens curvature.
Oh, I see.
This is referring to where does my image fall? Is it in front of the retina or behind it? When it's in front of it, it's nearsightedness.
Somebody
So
wanna-
you can actually have both myopia and astigmatism.
Okay.
You
I
can
was
have
just gonna ask.
myopia, yeah, astigma. You can have both or just one of them. I think so. Do you get what I'm saying?
I think I have both, which when I was going through this, I was like, it made me feel stupid too, because I went to, all these years, I thought astigmatism was, because I have one, I was like, I thought it was like A as in single stigmatism versus it being a whole word. But when I take my contact lenses out, then I can see close up like beautifully.
Yeah.
So me too, I got 2 stigmatisms.
She got two astigmatism.
I got
Yeah,
astigmatism.
so astigmatism is really just about the curve here. And you can have just an astigmatism with no other defects. It'll just cause a little bit of blurriness, or maybe certain parts, certain fields of your vision will be blurry. And you can have both astigmatism and myopia or hyper. Like you can be nearsighted, farsighted, that's the word, nearsighted or farsighted with astigmatism or without astigmatism. Does that make sense? They're like all different. Jennifer, did I lose you?
No, I muted. Sorry. Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. I was like, man, I really confused her now. She's not talking
So
to me.
no, she's not even responding. No. I hit mute, then I couldn't get to it
Yeah.
fast enough.
Okay.
Thank
So
you. No, that makes sense.
Talking about nearsighted or even farsighted, which we'll look at in the next slide. It's only about, let me erase this so you can see. Nearsighted or farsightedness is all about this right here. Where do these light rays fall, right? And then astigmatism is about the curve of the cornea, curve of the lens. How are they curved? Are they properly curved? Most of the time, it's the cornea that we have trouble with. Okay. So this is nearsightedness. I expect you to know that nearsightedness is myopia. When you are nearsighted, you can see things close up. Where is it? Close objects sharply, but you can't see far away. Okay. And it's because those light rays, that image is being focused in front of the retina. It's falling a little short. Now, you can also be farsighted, which is hyperopia. Hyperopia is basically the opposite. So this is where you can see, where is it? You can see distant objects clearly, but it's the close-up stuff. This is when you get older and you start needing reading glasses all of a sudden, right? So that is hyperopia. They're going to need reading glasses or readers, also called farsightedness. Hyperopia, let's look at it right here. So here's my light rays coming in, right? There's no astigmatism, curve is fine, lens is fine. We get to where we are focusing, everyone's doing their job, but now I have an image that is behind the retina. And again, just like we used a concave lens to correct myopia, we'll use a convex lens to correct hyperopia. And the idea is light rays are coming in, instead of pushing them out further away, we bring them closer in so that by the time they pass through the cornea and the lens, they're falling right onto the fovea. And that's how you correct that vision. Now, so hyperopia, here's what I want you to know. Let's do it right here. Okay, so myopia was what? Nearsighted, right? Myopia is nearsighted. Hyper, notice I always remember it because it's hyperopia. Hyper because it's doing its job so well that it's falling behind. It's gone past the retina, right? Hyperopia is farsightedness. So you can see things far away. You need readers when you go to read. And all of that is aside from astigmatism. Astigmatism is a separate issue. Now, I want you to understand that our bodies are constantly changing and modifying, right? And it's totally fine to be, as you're growing up, you may have myopia and need glasses, right? Because you have trouble seeing things far away, but you're reading fine. And then when you get to about 25, 30, your body's changing. You'll get to a point where you're normal and you no longer need glasses. And then flash forward another 15, 20 years, you're getting older and the lens isn't accommodating as well. And now all of a sudden you need readers or you need reading glasses. You know what I'm saying? Yes, we do shift. This is why they tell you, go check your eyes. Don't do one eye exam and then keep the same pair of glasses for 10 years because your eyes are constantly changing, just like everything else in our body. And so the lens is going to lose elasticity. The cornea is going to constantly being reshaped. Everything is changing. So you may start off in one end of the spectrum and end up on the reading end. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Questions on myopia, hyperopia, and astigmatism?
I have a random question.
Okay, give me your random question.
When your eyes are closed, what do your lenses do?
When your eye, it's not doing anything.
So like it's completely
It's not
relaxed,
trying to
so your
accommodate
body-
to anything.
So your body's relaxed.
Now, sometimes you'll have rapid eye movement, let's say when you're dreaming, but your lens is not having to accommodate to anything because you're not trying to focus on it.
Because of your
Like your extraocular, the extrinsic muscles,
Extrinsic
yes. The extrinsic muscles can move your eyes around as part of REM sleep, but they're not accommodating anything. Are you ready to move on to that?
Yeah.
Wait, Kamaya, yeah, I did, sorry. We're over time, aren't we?